Here be dragons.
Episode 3.
Of many.
We hope.
Yes.
Episode 3.1, I should say. This if this one dies in the ether, like ill-fated episode 2.
2.1?
2.1,
Yeah.
though it wasn't known by that name at the time.
No, it was not.
It was not. I am Matt Vansel.
And I am Nathan Rice.
And this is Here Be Dragons, where we do not discuss dragons most of the time.
Most of the time. Someday.
Someday we will. Someday we may. But that day is not today.
An all-dragon episode?
An all-dragon episode?
Here we go.
I think we're dragon so far already.
Yeah,
we're
here we go.
only a few seconds in. I forgot to convert this to... time. There we go. 42 seconds.
We only have 59 minutes and 23 seconds
We're getting used to this. Last month, we played with the compressor to try and make our sound better. Turned it all the way up, but it seemed the same. I forgot to turn it on.
You know, I'm told that things being on makes them function better than when they are off.
Being the opposite of on.
Yes.
All right. Let's get to it. We've got 59 minutes to kill. So this year, 2018, is the 40th anniversary of the Star Wars Holiday Special.
It is.
And you skipped it.
Yep. There's an annual party held by Jimmy McMichael and Cat
it's
Wood.
a gathering. I don't know if it's a party. Sort of has connotations of celebration.
There's food and commiseration.
Commiseration in spades.
Yeah. No, I did not make it this year. I don't know how sorry I am about that, considering that it is really god-awful. If you've never seen it, do yourself a favor and don't watch it.
The reason we're recording this on Wednesday and not Monday, our usual time, is because I got sick immediately after watching that. Like, my body had been holding it back for a while, holding the line against the encroaching illness that stress had induced, but after watching the Christmas special, it was like, screw it, we're done.
Grandpa Itchy's chin.
That was...
Yeah.
It cannot be unseen.
No.
Thankfully, my daughter had a meltdown only in the first hour in, and we were able to leave early.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, my daughter had a meltdown. It was so wonderful.
Yes.
It was the best thing.
It was the best meltdown she's ever pulled off.
Yeah.
Best benefits to it. As much hate as the Star Wars Holiday Special gets, and rightly so.
Yeah.
It is kind of fascinating to look back in time and see not just sort of a time capsule, but a really mediocre time capsule there.
It is sub-mediocre.
Sub-mediocre. Well, I mean, I was trying to put myself in the context of when this was made. Now imagine you saw Star Wars as a kid.
Right.
In the summer of '77. And you are so starved for anything Star Wars that includes the characters in the costumes delivering lines that you'd look forward to this. And then you see it.
Yeah, I can't imagine that anyone at the time was like, oh, thank God I got more of the Star Wars that I really wanted. The thing that inspired me in the first place when I saw A New Hope.
See, I want to say that's what I think I would have been like, because we're able to look at it in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember in '99 when we all went and saw The Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back at it, we can say the prequels were bad.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I saw it 4 times in the theater.
Yeah.
Like, it was the first Star Wars in nearly 2 decades.
That is true.
And so I forgave a lot of it. Like, I just was unwilling to see how deep the rot went in places.
Now, at the same time, Phantom Menace, to give it at least one positive, still has the best lightsaber duel in the entire Star Wars canon.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down.
I can give it that. And I really like Liam Neeson as a Jedi. Mm-hmm. I just felt like there was something off with the direction of Liam Neeson as a Jedi. Like, it was like all the pieces were there and you could see them, but someone hadn't assembled them right.
Someone had left out a few of the IKEA cam bolts in the assemblage of the Liam Neeson Jedi.
It was like, I really almost love Qui-Gon Jinn. I really like him, but I almost really love him.
And you feel like you should love him there.
Yes.
Yeah. I should go back, and I just want to make sure it's clear that I am in no way defending the Star Wars Holiday Special. In no way.
It sounds a little like you're defending the Star Wars Holiday Special.
To make it watchable, And I saw a version without this back in Stadium Video. If you remember, and if you never saw it, Stadium Video was this wonderful hole-in-the-wall video store.
Here in Tacoma.
Here in Tacoma, right across from Stadium High School. You actually saw the exterior and interior of it in Syphilitic Ninja Vampires. It's the place where we filmed that.
Yeah, the original.
That's true. But before the advent of the DVD and streaming services, it was where you could go to find anything.
Yeah.
The rare, the bizarre, the grotesque.
Well, even after DVD and before streaming, it was still, I mean, they switched over to DVD. They were early adopters.
They were, yeah. But you could find something like this.
Right, yeah.
And I saw, the version that we saw was the one that was just taped off of the television. It didn't have the riff tracks overlaid, which is the one that Jimmy and Kat mercifully subject us to.
Right.
So that there is some laughter to go on with the misery of what you're watching.
Yeah, I can't imagine watching that without the riff tracks.
I couldn't get through it. And I remember hitting the 1 hour mark thinking, oh, well, thank God that's done with. Oh, my God, there's more?
Right.
But the most interesting thing, I think, I mentioned it looking at a mediocre time capsule, is that it caught the commercials.
Oh, yeah.
As well.
Those are the best part of the whole thing, is the commercials.
There are at least 2 commercials specifically saying this union is good.
Yeah.
They're not selling anything other than union membership. 1978, the Great Recession began in 79, or the...
I mean, they're sort of selling their product, because they say, like, be sure when you buy, women's textiles, to look for the Women's Textiles Union Worker label. Like, so be like, hey, we had fair wages and were treated well, that's why you should buy these clothes. Yeah.
There's the idea that a union would buy a television ad time in what was to have been a huge market, pricey market for this. Other commercials were for, like, they had a promo bit where they ran, here's what's coming up this week, this Thursday on CBS. And there were a couple things, like 60 Minutes is still going. There was Dallas they did at the end, had a promo. And then in between were these 2 doomed, forgotten by time sitcoms that have, again, vanished like a fart in the wind. Yeah. We saw a movie promo for
Wild
something.
Geese?
Yes, Wild Geese, starring...
See, I didn't even have to go this year.
Starring Roger Moore, that action hero of the late 70s.
That's right.
Anyway, fascinating to see what was being sold back then to a pretty much a captive audience. This was before cable.
And I mean, there were a good number of kids' toys advertisements too, like a Tobor. It's basically just this little robot thing that goes around.
It's robot spelled backwards.
Yeah, and that's the big selling point, is Tobor is robot spelled backwards.
Yeah. I got to turn the compressor down a bit. I think we may be spiking out a bit.
That's my fault, sorry.
Whoa, there we go. Anyway, we subjected ourselves to it again, got up through the animated portion.
Oh my God.
And then Bubbles started having a meltdown and we were able to escape.
Yeah.
So what are you working on?
What am I working on? Let's see, right now, I think I mentioned on the last podcast, I'd just been cast in a show.
Yes, how's that going?
It's going all right. We open a week after Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's coming up here in about a week. We have 4 or 5 rehearsals, including today, between now and then, including dress rehearsal and preview performance.
Are you in the polishing phase of the rehearsals?
Yes. Luckily, I'm not in the musical portion, otherwise we'd be very far behind. But no, it's going well. I'm looking forward to it. I'm spending a lot of my time doing that. What else am I working on? That's everything I'm working on that is artistic in nature, I think. How about you?
Well, let's see. So, Hop Jockey, now, which was the previous title of it now, of the book. Now it's The Stray and the Hole in the Stars, is literally in my garage.
Oh, all right.
The hardbacks finally arrived. We got them done by a different printer, and they took about a week longer than we were expecting in the shipping. I imagine it's holiday traffic, whatnot. Yeah. But, so the original plan was we wanted to have the books to at least the stateside folks by the Thanksgiving weekend. That's not going to happen now, but so now we're aiming for by the end of the year.
Okay.
The holiday is eating the rest of this weekend, and we'll be into shipping, I should say, as early as Monday, which I guess is Cyber Monday now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the surly technological younger brother of Black Friday.
With a few less riots and beatings.
Fewer, yes, definitely. And otherwise, I am getting ready to do the January shoot of Journey Quest 3.5.
Yes.
So we're in pre-production phase on that. Nothing really to discuss there because it's all, spreadsheets and shot lists at this point.
I don't know. Sounds sexy to me.
It is not. It is the boring bookkeeping phase of the filmmaking process. You know, a good year, if you're a filmmaker, a good year is where you spend 10% of your time making movies.
Yep.
Also working on the Farther Old World Bible. The outlining phase of that. That is really fun and rewarding, and I'm enjoying it a lot. The backers who got lore-based rewards are starting to send that stuff in, and I'm folding it into the history as we go. It's proving to be so big that it needs a glossary already.
Oh, wow, all right.
I was keeping a list of different terms I needed to define, and then said, no, I'll shift this to its own Word document, and holy crap, I need to shift this to a Excel spreadsheet. It's over 200 different terms right now.
Oh, wow.
And I expect that will grow.
Now, were a lot of this stuff, the terms and the work you're doing on it, was this a lot of stuff you already kind of had conceived and you just hadn't written it out yet? Or is a lot of this stuff that came up during the writing where you said, I had this very vague outline, and now that I'm putting down the specifics, I realize I need more specifics?
It's very much the second case there, that a lot of it has been discovered work, or the need for a discovered need for terms there. Like getting into the whole section on, how does magic work? What are the 7 keys of magic? Oh, well, they're these. Well, those all need their own names, but they diverge. There's a high praxis and a low praxis to most schools of magic.
Okay.
Which is where we get the misconception of white magic, black magic, or high magic, low magic. No, there are different versions of each school being what the magic affects.
Okay.
And those need different terms, and there are sub-schools that rolled out of that. And then there was the whole breaking down, what is the actual process of spellcasting? What are the pieces that go into it?
Okay.
It's very simple, you see. When a spellcaster begins to cast a spell, they form the numinex of all the different protea they weave together and then ignite with the scent. That is what happens when a spell is cast. Okay, let's walk that back a bit. Uncoil that. But so I'm having fun in my own little nerd bubble here.
That's awesome.
That I get to inhabit for the next month or more, putting that together. And also, in what we're working on, we have our first shameless promotion. That's the terminology he used.
Is this where we put in like an annoying sound effect, like a klaxon of some kind, to let everyone know this is the shameless promotion, to sort of advertise that part of the program?
I don't have an effects suite, but if you want to make an annoying klaxon sound, go ahead.
I mean, I can definitely make an annoying sound, and I can... No, I can just make an annoying sound. I don't think I can do a klaxon really well.
All right, Seth, this is for you. You can stop now.
But it's not annoying until it keeps going for like a minute.
All right, go ahead.
No, we'll skip it.
Okay. Remind me not to forget to edit this part.
Yeah, no, you should definitely edit that out. If anyone hears that, we're going to lose some of our large audience.
Every one of our listeners is 2% of the audience.
So, yeah, let's 100% edit that out.
Shameless promotion time! For Canadian and United States-based listeners, I'm pleased to announce my dear friends Kathy Digby and Seth Davis of Digby Davis are organizing a limited run of Journey Quest themed t-shirts. The sale is for 5 days only, starting Black Friday, November 23rd, and ending at midnight Pacific time on Giving Tuesday, November 27th. Seth sent Nathan, Kevin Pittman, and myself prototypes over the weekend, and I have to say I'm very impressed with these shirts and their designs. If you've seen, you probably are familiar with Seth's work. He does a lot of Photoshoppy goodness around the Journey Quest and Zoe properties. He did the Glorian Bravery Favors the Brave shirt and the old Keep Calm, Carry On design from World War II. He did the JQ, GQ covers for all those. He did the Peanuts themed Journey Quest cast.
Yeah.
Near the end of the last campaign, which actually is featured on one of the shirts here, the one that you'll be doing. We're wearing the shirts now. You can't actually see that though, but we'll take some pictures later. And also, one of my least favorites was when he did the Chibi and the Mists.
Yeah.
From Christian and Maggie's wedding at the last ZoeCon. But the shirts are great. The design came through really well. And like I said, I'm wearing one right now.
They're sharp.
They are sharp indeed. And Kathy and Seth's goal with this campaign is to help support small businesses and independent creators like myself. In writing the script I'm reading to you now, I did not read this before reading it here. Seth wanted to let you know that 10% of the profits from this campaign will make their way back to me. Hey, all right.
All right.
Very nice. Thank you, Seth. If you'd like to give more directly, when you order, you'll also have the opportunity to purchase a Tip the Creator in units of $1. 100% of those tips will come directly to me once the campaign finishes. I am entirely behind this campaign.
I can support this 100%.
I support the hell out of this. If this project is successful enough, Kathy and Seth hope to release more Journey Quest and the Gamers-themed merchandise in the future, which I would love to see, personally.
Oh,
They do
yeah.
great work. Can you say Chibi-chan onesie? I cannot.
Nope.
As opposed to any auditory evidence to the contrary. So, if you are ready to order, head on over to onward.com. That's ONWAARD.com. It's in all caps here on the page. I don't know if that counts or matters.
No,
online.
I don't think it does.
And if you are too brave to spare the elderly, consider buying a shirt for Grandma too. It's already red, so you won't see her bleed.
A big benefit.
So does that count as selling out?
Um,
Because I feel dirty.
Here's the thing.
Thankfully, I have this new shirt, which is made with a wonderful cotton film.
Also, I think with selling out, you have to get rich for it to count.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I think you can shill things and not be selling out until you actually get like a rich and famous lifestyle out of it.
Okay. So
That's what I'm telling myself.
So I'm stuck in the shill mode then.
Yep.
Nothing
and my
wrong
friends
with
at earwaxremoval.org.com.gov.
I was wondering where the tracksuit came from.
That's right.
That is a hideous logo.
Earwax.org.com.gov. Companies and organizations that the government uses to clean your ears. So,
What are you
Yeah.
reading?
what am I reading? I'm not reading a ton of like books right now. Right now, I am doing spending a lot of time studying my script. So I've been doing that a lot. I have been taking a PowerPoint training to get Microsoft certified, so I've been doing a lot of reading in that.
Oh, wow.
And I have been, in my free time, reading the Savage Worlds Rifts Player's Guide since Christian invited me to join their Rifts campaign. I wanted to get caught up on that. There may be something coming up in live streaming on that sometime in the future. I don't know if I'm allowed to reveal that, but I just did, so take that.
But vaguely, with
yeah.
plausible deniability.
Yeah. There may not. Who knows? Anything is possible. What are you reading?
Well, I finished Other Minds, The Octopus, the Sea, and the Deep Origins of Consciousness, that book about cephalopod intelligence. And I was, it took longer than usual just because it was hard to maintain so many of the details sometimes.
Okay.
In one setting.
Did you have to go back and like reread parts just to catch up?
Yes, and imagine also that there's a very energetic toddler bringing me a Mercer Mayer book every time I finish a paragraph.
Oh yeah.
And then taking my apple in exchange.
That seems like a fair trade.
Anyway, the book I recommended. It's a fascinating look into how minds and intelligence develop. I forget where it was that I left off last time in talking about it, but what the last few chapters focused on was the amazing camouflage ability that the cephalopods developed, particularly the octopus and the cuttlefish, which is even more remarkable in the camouflage that it can display.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's probably got the most amazing advanced camouflage system in the entire animal kingdom.
Wow.
Now, the way that it works, and this just blew my mind, is the octopus and the cuttlefish, the squid to a lesser degree, though there are some squid that can visually signal patterns to one another, but they don't necessarily use it for camouflage, but more like a visual language, which is remarkable. And it's like, how do you develop language if you have no vocal cords?
Yeah.
There's a whole section about this. Is like if that the development of language, the spoken thing, developed how we thought about it. So if you have no way to think in sentences, how do you communicate visually in patterns of color and whatnot? How does that develop?
Yeah.
Right. There's no sound that you can make that corresponds with the understanding. And like when I'm speaking to you, I am creating sounds that I understand that you understand at the same time. Right. It's happening as part of that synergy there. But so the speculation was, well, did they use visuals to communicate? It's because sometimes they will do it on their own. They will do it apparently for fun. They will do it when they are not in danger in times. And the way that it's done is remarkable. It far outstrips what the chameleon can do.
Really?
So within octopus and cuttlefish's skin are several pigment sacs, microscopic little beads of pigment, mostly yellow and red. And the way that they change color in that spectrum is just to stretch or contract the muscles around them.
Okay.
That brings those pigments forward, and they change color.
Okay.
But then underneath that layer, they have a layer of, I think it was called iridophores, that can, through reflection, create the other spectrum of colors that they don't get out of the pinks, out of the yellows and the reds.
Wow.
And then beyond that is a series of cells called the leucophores that I didn't entirely catch what they're doing. I don't think they create light, but it's more that they can reflect it and allow them to mimic the pattern, to the point where if an octopus is on the ground and its eyes are on, well, not the ground, but on the sea floor, and its eyes are on you, it can become the color and the texture of the sea floor. And it does this by sensing the color of the light behind it through its skin and mirroring that.
Is that maybe like what those leucophores do?
I think that's what they do.
So it can change that. Wow. That's...
And it happens instantaneous. It happens almost at the speed of thought.
Wow.
And what's more remarkable is the cuttlefish, while it's doing this, is having patterns go over it, almost like clouds.
So it can
sometimes.
Move into it at the same time.
Well, the octopus can move into it too, but the cuttlefish's patterns can move over its skin, almost like it's a view screen.
Wow.
Like, imagine the way the author put it was a video screen tapped into your brain. And it can project what it's thinking. So bolts of light, brightness, clouds of things moving around. Just fascinating, right?
That's impressive.
And then it ended with this paean on how short cephalopod life is. The great Pacific octopus lives for maybe 4 years. The giant Pacific octopus. Most octopuses live only 2 years. Same with cuttlefish. They just deteriorate rapidly. And part of that is the machinery of intelligence is expensive.
Yes.
It takes a lot, and then there was, of course, the speculation of how did it evolve on this side of the branch of the animal tree of evolution, and why? And some of the speculation is that where we've seen this similar type of intelligence is in animals that need different approaches to gathering their food.
Right.
For example, like other creatures that we see intelligence in, dolphins, crows, chimps, gibbons, with the use of tools to gather termites or crack open nuts or whatnot. It's if there's a variation in where you need to gather your food, there is more of a chance that you will develop or evolve problem-solving skills.
If you're the only or one of few species who can access food at that wherever it's located, be it inside something or at a different place that most things can reach.
And it's why certain animals, like for example the frog, maybe haven't done it. It's because the way that it gathers its food is, tongue out, grab the fly. That's not going to change.
Right. There's enough food that flies in front of its face that it can do that.
Right. As opposed to, say, the octopus on the reef, who needs to get into the shellfish and has to do this while at the same time is being hunted itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the idea was it created, and I am so bad at paraphrasing at this, but the phrase that I remember saying out is it created the need for an excess of mind. And
that's an interesting.
And so you have all this leftover capability in this in the most massive neural system in the animal kingdom, in these critters that are solitary, that have so much of a range of what they can say in their expressions, but no words to go with that. As opposed to the baboons, who can make I think it was one of 4 different types of grunts, but because they are social creatures, carry so much significance, and they can tell which member of their troop spoke from without even seeing them.
Yeah.
Anyway, the whole why they are so short-lived and how tragic that honestly is, this little flitting, kaleidoscopic, boneless creature that only lives 2 years. And the writer goes into a bit about the nature of mutation and evolution. It's like, the good mutations are passed on, the bad mutations die out. Well, yes, but not necessarily. It's not that clean and dried. A lot of the mutations that allow a species to survive may carry with them adverse side effects that do not manifest until they are older. Right. And the whole idea, the way he phrased this was, why does the rockfish live 200 years and an octopus lives 2? Why does the sequoia live 1,000 years and we, if we're lucky, live 90? Right. And it's led to a sense that aging is designed in animals, but it's not. Because like the idea of being, well, maybe if an animal would grow old and die in order to create more space for its own progeny, is that self-sacrifice? Is that something that's a survival trait? Well, no, because there would be others that didn't have that trait that would survive to that age and keep reproducing, and then the trait would go out. So the speculation is the leaps forward in evolution that allowed it all these wonderful abilities carried with it
Had a
detrimental
drawback,
drawbacks that didn't take place until after you'd made it. And we can look at that as ourselves, as why do we age? Why do we reach senescence? Why do we gain Alzheimer's? Why do our knees lock up? You know, well, once you're past
breeding age,
you don't need to stick around.
No.
And with the octopuses, apparently the calculation that the species made, and of course I'm anthropomorphizing here, is, well, do we try to live longer and have more experience, or do we immediately try to lay our eggs and reproduce the moment that we can? Understanding that they live in the most predatory environment on Earth. Right? And that's the route that they went, is you get a year. And then you grow to full size, and like with most species of octopus, once the mating is done, the female lays her eggs in her den and will gestate those for months and months and months and then die. And so it was a fascinating look at a remarkable, enigmatic creature that have been enjoying reading more and more about. And I recommend it to anyone. The book is Other Minds, The Octopus, the Sea, and the Deep Origins of Consciousness by Peter Godfrey-Smith, which I read after reading The Soul of an Octopus by Montgomery. I highly recommend both.
Wow, I think I might borrow that book from you.
I think you just did.
Yeah.
During our break there.
Yeah.
Seamless. You didn't know we broke.
Ooh.
Working
impressive. You know, I was talking specifically about the evolutionary path piece you mentioned. So what then is the drawback for the octopus if it does live longer? Like, how does that negatively impact its potential to continue thriving as a species?
It just starts to fall apart. The Technicolor view screen skin starts to develop white patches where they can't change their color.
Okay.
The cuttlefish starts to lose its ability to control its buoyancy and just basically falls up to its death.
Oh.
And like the tentacles will start to rot. Some of them will start to freeze. But there is actually, there's a bit in there. There's a deep sea octopus found in the marine trench where, I forget the name of it, but it might have been the vampire octopus, or the Dumbo octopus. Don't take my word for it. It's in the book, where they found a ledge where an octopus was brooding her eggs, and she was brooding them for 53 months.
Wow.
Longest known brooding period in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
And that's longer than the lifespans of most octopuses, including the giant Pacific octopus. And the thought there was, in the deeper sea where there's less predation, there's less of less urgency to mate immediately to continue the species. And so the idea is maybe if they evolve downward or into those colder climes where they can live longer, there's a chance for them to experience more of life.
So then, because I mean, especially with things like intelligence, I always wonder, because for humans, we live longer than it takes to procreate, for the most part, barring other things, but not necessarily, like you say, to the length of the sequoia. But we also have a very large organized system for passing on knowledge.
Yes.
And in fact, we, as a species, have accumulated more knowledge than we could possibly pass to one individual member of the species. So being able to live that extra time allows us to pass more of that knowledge on. And I mean, at this point, it's so systematized that, if half of us died at age 4, we'd still have all that knowledge. But prior to that, you had to teach, your young how to hunt, how to prepare, the hides, how to whatever it was to guarantee that they continued to survive. And I wonder if there's just enough knowledge there that even if you're past breeding age, being around to just be like, hey, you need to pull on that thing. This happens once every 20 years when, whatever that might be.
I imagine that's the case. I forget where I read this, but I read one article that said that grandmothers were instrumental in shaping human society.
I believe that.
Because I mean, going back to the days of the troops of hunter-gatherers, you had members of the clan or the tribe or whatnot who could take care of the young, who had lots of knowledge, who weren't at much risk for dying on the hunt or in intertribal conflict.
And they'd already survived the period of time where they could have children.
Exactly. Whose role there is to pass on knowledge and help rear the young and take some of those burdens away from the youngest, most able-bodied members of the group,
so that they could go and do the thing which helped the group survive more with their higher physical capability.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So then why don't we live longer to pass on more of that knowledge? I was actually strangely thinking about something like this the other day, specifically that the reason we die is so that we as a species can change. Because you think about social outlook, like in the way that we, like even something like society's view in the United States on homosexuality.
Sure.
A lot of many people in previous generations had a negative view of anything that wasn't a traditional marriage. And by and large, as a new generation has been raised up with those ideas, they're very accepting of them. But there's a point at which I think we as people sort of get hardwired in a way of thinking, like as we get older. And so if we didn't die off, we'd be stuck approaching the same problems the same way. I don't know if there's like an evolutionary change that we could have gone through where our brains became more elastic and able to change through time, or if sort of getting that hardwiredness is what allowed, say, the grandmothers to be, no, I know exactly how this goes and this is how it has to be done, and having a very prescribed system that they would pass down, which is what helped the species survive. I don't know, I'm entirely extemporizing here, so.
Extemporize away.
Yeah.
We've got 30 minutes to fill.
Okay, anyway, I was just thinking about that the other day, that how would our species possibly advance socially without death?
You got a lot of potential for world building there. Speculative fiction and whatnot. What do you have with a species that doesn't age, or a species where, like, how does it? If death were not prescribed, would we see social stratification, where one group continues to age or to enjoy the benefits of agelessness by mandating that the lower echelons have to be the ones to do the dying, so that you don't overrun your own lands and overtax your own resources?
Sort of the, I mean, that'd be interesting, because I think once you have that power, if you're living forever, when and how would you possibly be giving that up?
Exactly.
And so, if, like you say, you have to make room. There was an old Star Trek episode, original series, where these two societies were at war. But instead of actually bombing each other, they simulated all of the attacks on a computer, and then they said, okay, you were in the section that was bombed, go report to the chamber where we're going to disintegrate you. So that way we don't have to go through the horrors of war, but we're going to make sure that, we've come to this agreement where we're going to make sure the appropriate amount of people are killed off so that the war continues.
Wow.
But we don't have to deal with most of the side effects. We just kill some people and we continue on. It's sad, but that's how we're not going to destroy ourselves. So I wonder if you take something like that and apply it in that situation where, okay, it's, you've reached your 100 years or whatever, now it's your turn to go. But then there's, anyway, I think you're right. That is some interesting speculative fiction.
Wasn't that the basic plot of Logan's Run? The classic
yeah,
sci-fi?
well, yeah. Theirs was just that at a
At 30?
certain time, I think it was at 30. They killed you off, and for some reason you jumped into a pit and got shot. But yeah, that was the idea on Logan's Run.
Best science fiction asks these kinds of questions.
Yeah.
It challenges what you expect of how society is run. The stuff that just is sort of a part of the machinery that you don't question.
See, I think,
or that you should question.
I think the fact that you went directly to, hey, that's great speculative fiction, demonstrates, I think, a different way that writers maybe, or people who are used to, like, approaching things in that way, think about. Because I never thought, ooh, what a great speculative fiction. I was just thinking, like, what is the nature of why we die? You know, whereas you were, like, immediately jumped on, ooh, that's a story.
Well, I actually had been working a bit on this as...
Oh, for elves?
Yes, with the elves as part of the Farther Old World Bible.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned that briefly last week.
It's like we've established in the world that elves live 1,000 years and stay functional and capable until the end. And so that begs a lot of questions. It's like, how does your psychology change if you expect to live 1,000 years?
Yeah.
Is it that you consider yourself extremely long-lived, or is it that you react in horror at how quickly everything else withers and dies?
And I think, I remember talking about that last week. Yeah,
and that's the course that I spent most of today, before the meetings today, outlining that.
Oh, cool.
Going into the elvish long view and how your psychology changes when you are a nearly ageless, static being, and like how, for example, one thing that I think is pretty cool is the elves have no sensuality. Or they have the ability, they have to summon it. It's not a thing that is constant with them, because if they were constantly amorous the way you are or I were, the world would quickly be overrun with elves because, elf maids remain fertile for 1,000 years.
Yeah. Okay.
So as a biological societal thing, it's like they come into mating season, but they choose to do that, and it's something that decades can pass, and which part of the reason that sometimes they're considered cold and aloof is that they don't pick up on the kind of signal that someone's interested. They're not thinking that way. It's literally not on their minds. However, one of many reasons they are on guard around humans is the humans flip that switch. Something
you were mentioning
something about their pheromones or their very presence awakens that ardor. It doesn't necessarily turn them on, just awakens them to the possibility of it, changes their thinking. Part of that came from some of the old fantasy that I was reading a few years back, particularly Poul Anderson. He had a book called The Broken Sword that I was reading around the time we were doing Gamers 3, and really influenced sort of the development of the Seelie court and the Tuatha, the characters of Dundureel and the relationship with Myriad there. I hadn't really thought of that until now, or hadn't remembered that, so thank you for a nice little trip.
Yeah. Yeah, my random ramblings, if it led us to somewhere entertaining and nice. And
anyway, I think it brings us full circle on the subject of cephalopod intelligence.
Yes, absolutely.
So what are you watching now?
What am I watching? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm watching a lot of PowerPoint training videos. So there's that. Being busy with the play and then busy during the day doing unemployment-related stuff, I haven't been watching as much stuff. I actually, because sometimes just at the end of the day I don't want to concentrate too much. I
completely understand that.
Yeah. I've been looking at, like, I'll watch videos on YouTube. And, sometimes I'll watch reviews of things I like. And it was, can't remember what the video was, but it was someone saying, hey, if you hated the prequels, but liked Star Wars in general and thought that they had potential, I know it's animated, but you should watch the Clone Wars series. And it was like, it gives context to that piece of history. And I like my Star Wars lore. So I was like, I don't have to think too hard about this. And I mean, it's definitely, the dialogue is meant to be understandable by an 11-year-old, But the characterization, I was like, the characters are very clear in who they are and how they behave. The storytelling, it kind of jumps. Like, it doesn't just focus on, like, those main characters. Like, some of the stories are just about these clones who are all, the same physical makeup, but also what makes them different from each other, and how do you operate when you know that you're the same as everybody else, and what's your attitude toward, being in a unit of soldiers when they're you. What's your attitude towards the people in charge when, you don't know, am I disposable to these people because I'm just like everybody else, I'm just another piece of the machine? So
the Clone Wars is more from the point of view of the clone soldiers themselves?
Some of it is.
Okay.
I would say, maybe 20%.
Okay.
Like, because it goes, and then it'll follow Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Sure.
It'll go, different places. But it's not just the adventures of these 3 Jedi. Although there was a lot of the adventures of these 3 Jedi. But it was, I'm only in season 1. I'm maybe halfway through. Some of the things I noticed, though, was almost like, okay, there are things you can do in here that you can't do as easily in a standard movie. Like, you can have some pretty badass lightsaber fights that an actual person would have an enormous amount of trouble performing.
Right.
But that theoretically these supernatural beings can do because they have the Force and, you know, etc. Anyway, I'm as a, okay, I need to shut my brain off but also be entertained show, pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I might have to check that out.
Yeah. I was more impressed than I thought I would be. I'd avoided it for a long time because I was like, animated for kids.
I recently watched a animated series myself, but before that I did finish Daredevil season 3.
Oh yeah.
And I was really satisfied with it, and I was satisfied with it for like emotionally cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how it ended. I liked that if the series does not continue, I would feel satisfied.
Right.
Right. I would feel you wrapped everything else up that you needed to. You had a great escalation where you got back to the roots of this character and the villain and hero dynamic, and that was really satisfying. The one thing though that the splinter that keeps bugging me in my brain is I don't know if it's how he's written or if it's the character. I don't want to say it's the performance because I've seen the actor do other things, but the character of Foggy Nelson bothers me in a certain way.
What is it about it?
It's that he seems to underreact to everything. Even when he's in mortal danger, he seems like he's a spectator in his own life to me. And again, I don't know if that is the thing is, it's consistent, so I wouldn't say it's any one director's bit. I don't think he was miscast or anything. I don't want to allude to that. It's just I found it odd that he seems to dissociate or be almost performing who he is in life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like when you see Karen, and the trauma that she goes through, it's like you are in the moment experiencing that.
Yeah.
When you see Matt, Matt has a way of putting barriers up, certainly, but I know he's present there and he's suffering. Foggy, there seems to be almost this, that maybe it's a defense mechanism. He's putting an emotional wall up between himself, and he seems like he's watching himself do stuff to me. And the effect is that even the happy moments, he seems to be distant.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if, well, I mean, I don't want to get too heady here, especially about, Daredevil. But Jean-Paul Sartre described how people go through the world. And he basically said, even, most people sort of do that. Like, if you're a waiter, you're also, a little bit of you is kind of playing the part of a waiter. Like, if you're, a parent, there's a part of you that's playing the part of a parent. He doesn't say a part of you, he just says you're playing the part of a parent consciously. And I think there's something to some of that in that, for the first time, especially you're doing something that you've never experienced before, you're kind of copying what you do know, which is sort of playing that part. So, I'm just wondering if maybe it's something where he's just kind of has an external awareness, like, a little more heavily than other people do. I don't know.
I'd buy that. I was just thinking, examples there of you seeing yourself performing. It's like, I've even said it poems, if I can slip into professor mode for a moment. And switch into the lecture, no, shut up, I know about this, let me tell you. Versus slip into the parent mode, slip into the husband mode. Slip into the submissive mode that, I shouldn't have mentioned that part. But I see what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Cool. So the other thing that I watched recently was a Netflix animated series.
Yeah?
Castlevania.
How is that? I was curious, and I wasn't curious enough yet to actually watch it.
I had seen season 1 come out, and I just finished I rewatched season 1 and season 2, and I have to say, my reaction was perplexing. I thought that the first season was fantastic. Now, first off, let me take a step back. It is based on the series of Konami games.
Yeah.
The Castlevania games. Specifically, it's based on Castlevania 3.
Okay.
And I only know that because I remember reading about it in Nintendo Power when I was a kid. I never played the Castlevania games, and that was because, as a kid, I had very limited income, being the child of music teachers.
Right.
And so if I wanted a new video game, my strategy was wait until your birthday or Christmas.
Okay. So it's not the story of the Belmont line, right? It's Alucard?
It is the story of the Belmont line. There were 4 playable characters in there.
Oh, okay.
There was Trevor Belmont, Sypha Belnades, the magician, a wall-hopping pirate named Grant Dynasty, who they left out.
don't know why they left that character out.
Right, kind of clashed with the setting. And then Alucard, who in this case is the son of Dracula.
Right.
And in the first season, and the casting, by the way, was phenomenal. Dracula is voiced by Graham McTavish, who's a Scottish actor. You may best know as playing Dwalin in the Hobbit series.
Okay.
Trevor Belmont is voiced by Richard Armitage,
Oh.
or Thorin Oakenshield.
Yeah.
And Alucard is played by a man who only ever seems to be betraying his own kind, James Callis.
Oh, that's funny.
Anyway, the first series was only 4 episodes of about 22 minutes each. It's anime style, and I thought it was great. I thought they nailed the half-hour dramatic format. It is dark. It is gritty. The people in Wallachia seem doomed. And it focuses mostly on how Dracula is wronged in the beginning and why he does what he does.
Interesting.
And by the end of the end, it feels like what I was expecting a series about Castlevania, about going into Dracula's castle and killing a bunch of increasingly difficult monsters, would be, which is killing a bunch of increasingly difficult monsters. We find Trevor Belmont as a drunk who kind of finds the adventure thrust upon him and rises to the occasion.
Okay.
He fights a kick-ass monster in episode 3 that I don't want to give away because it's fantastic.
Okay.
The fight at the end of season 4, animation is great, and it ends. And I was like, whoa, it's over? Like, I was really enjoying that. I was really getting into that. It was the pacing was great. The writing was fun. It's written by Warren Ellis
What's
of comics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so the dialogue's fantastic. It's clear he loves the source material, and it's also clear that it's been true to the source material in many ways. The character design mimics the character design in the games. They have a story about how he gets the metal whip that appears in the games there. They even work in why the demons explode when they die and stuff. So that was season 1, though the whip comes in season 2, and so I was really looking forward to season 2. But then season 2, which is 8 episodes, just completely changed its momentum. It was going into another game that I hadn't played, and apparently there are characters who exist in that series that appear here. But it felt like it just lost a lot of narrative momentum. That said, episodes like 6 through 7 and through the end are kick-ass. Fantastic fun.
Okay.
But it went from, we have just forged the group, we're going to go face Dracula, to we hardly see that group for the first half of the series. And it's all what's going on within Dracula's castle. And the way they set up Dracula in that beginning, when he's only visible in that first bit of episode 1, you see the castle with its inverted towers and its great gears and machinery and advanced technology, and they set him up to be, he is almost a godlike, Satan-like power. Holy crap, how are you ever going to overcome this guy? But then, when we see him in season 2, he's one of several vampires. He's the leader. He's brought them together, and there's a vampire court, and there's backstabbing and machinations, and it feels very World of Darkness and very mopey vampire.
Oh, okay.
In a way, and I just started to lose interest and momentum, and it got really talky. That it had such great economy of action and dialogue in the first season. There never felt like there was enough, whereas here it started to feel like it was dragging. And that was unfortunate. And even more unfortunate was it stopped being Trevor Belmont's story.
Okay.
To the point where it's like we barely saw him in the first half of the season. Second half of the season, they go back to the Belmont estate to look for ways to fight Dracula. But then when it comes time to fight him, most of Dracula's power has been sapped away by this rebellion against him from the other vampires. And they literally just walk into Castlevania and kick his ass. Like, Trevor Belmont isn't even present in the final fight. And I know it feels like it should be great and emotionally satisfying at the end, but we wound up spending so little time with these characters that a lot of the stuff just doesn't work. It felt like the ratio was way off. That we should have spent only about a third of our time within, Dracula's castle and from the point of view of his forge masters, and spent that time in the characters we've already invested time in, developing their relationship, because there were jokes that didn't work. There was inter-party conflict that didn't work because it hadn't been set up. At the end, when they're sitting on the side of the hill looking at a new dawn, Sypha literally turns to the protagonist and says, "But no, you have changed. And here are all the ways that you have changed. When I first met you, you were these character traits, but now you are these character traits." And I'm looking at this thinking, I didn't see any of those progression of character traits, because there was no point where there was no room for you to grow there. You went from let's go kick his ass to let's kick his ass. Yeah, we kicked his ass. And apparently the series has been renewed. There's going to be a third season,
Okay.
and I will watch that because with a writer of Ellis's caliber is not going to make fundamental structural mistakes.
Do you think maybe other fingers got poked into the pie?
I think that's very likely. I was going to say, after watching for season 1, this is the best video game adaptation I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And even after season 2, I think maybe that season could have been 2 episodes shorter.
Okay.
I would still watch it. I'd recommend it. And
Okay.
I'd be curious to get your feedback on it as well.
All right. I might check that out. The one other thing I didn't mention is I did go out to see Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Ooh.
And it's really good. Yeah, it's really good. A lot of the like Melissa McCarthy just gives a great performance. There's a lot.
And she's normally a comedian.
Yeah, and there's funny parts, but I mean she gives like a serious and very good performance. I mean it is just really tight storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely highly recommend it. The performances are just pretty fantastic.
What's the story?
The story is that she is, and it's a true story, that she is a biographer who's had some very successful biographies, but now people just aren't buying biographies. And so she starts to forge letters from famous people who are dead and sell them for money. But she's doing it by writing in the voice of the author.
Which she knows because she's a biographer who studied these people.
Right,
thoroughly.
and not all of them are people she studied, but like she studies them as the movie goes, and then she'll write her letter, and she starts making a lot of money.
That's a cool concept.
So yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I can't recommend it enough.
Is it in theaters?
I believe it still is. I watched it a week and a half ago in a theater, so I recommend that.
I will add that to the list.
All right, question time.
Questions.
Let's see what we got from Gordon. If someone wanted to send a gift to Matt Vancel, what is the best place to direct that to? That would be Nathan's address.
I promise I did not seed this question. Well, first off, thank you. That's very generous. Depending on what you're sending, and Gordon, I know you are an enthusiast of certain bubbly beverages. Probably the best place would be to send it to the P.O. box for my business, which would be Barefoot Media. That's BEAR Foot Media. P.O. Box 23212, Federal Way, Washington 98093. I haven't had to say it out loud. It's weird. I can write it perfectly, but if I have to say it out loud, I'm tripping over my own words.
I mean, that makes sense. Okay. From Rival, Matt.
Yes.
You've written a variety of media. Movies, web series, games, novels. Does writing for different media impact how you write for others? As an example, does writing novels impact how you approach writing movies?
Wow. That example, does writing for novels impact how I approach to writing movies? It kind of helps with some of the descriptive text there, certainly. It's a different format, certainly, a different structure to it. One thing is that when I first started writing novels, I was actually kind of afraid of it because, I mean, if you're a filmmaker and a screenwriter, nobody reads you.
Right.
The audience does not read your material. The audience watches your material, and they don't see the actual prose. So I was not used to that much freedom in a way. Like when you're writing for the screen, you are supposedly limited to 2 senses. What can I see? What can I hear? A more accurate way to say it is, you have to write down what can be filmed. What can I see that can be filmed? So when I first started writing for the novels, I was like, wait a minute, I can suddenly go into characters' heads and I can do asides and stuff like that. I developed this narrative agoraphobia at first that took a while to get over. Just sort of, and my editor at the time, Jay Edidin, really was helpful in that. It's like, just get out of your own way and tell your story. Don't worry about trying to be super floored with your writing
Mhm.
or elegant whatnot. Tell your story, your voice will develop from that. And I remember back when I was in college and I was first trying to get some when I was writing short form and
Mhm.
submitting, I would submit to, my favorite magazine at the time was Marion Zimmer Bradley's Fantasy Magazine. That's
Okay.
what it was called. And she was released quarterly, and she was the writer who, of course, she's probably most famously known for The Mists of Avalon.
Yeah.
And what she did with her fortune from that was she founded a fantasy literary magazine that came out quarterly, and she made it a priority to publish 2 unknown authors with every issue.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's what I aimed for, and didn't sell anything to her, but I did get some good advice from the magazine, from her general notes, and
Oh, nice.
one of them was, the story is Bill gets his ass caught up in a tree, and the story is seeing how he tries to get down.
Okay.
I think there was a bear chasing him there too.
Okay.
But one thing that she said that I've never forgotten was, "Stop showing me how beautifully you write and tell me a goddamn story."
Okay.
So that's what I've tried to, that I took with it, and
Mhm.
have tried to apply that to whatever the medium is. And of course, the medium is different. The requirements are different. Writing for games, especially video games in particular, you have the least welcoming audience for actually reading material. Right? Everyone in video games is yeah, I know how to play. Don't you
Right.
try to stop me and be clever or cute or give me words or backstory. Get the hell out of my way. Okay, how do I do this?
Right.
Right? It is in some ways, it is an antagonistic audience whose trust you have to earn first. So does writing for different media impact how I write for others? I think it's helped. I think that writing for movies has helped me develop a better sense of dialogue,
Mhm.
because that's one of the few places where the writing does show up visibly to an audience.
Right.
Right. So that's my answer.
All right. Well, I know, like William Goldman just recently passed.
Yes, God rest his soul.
And I was reading an article that talked about how, because he started as a novelist, at the time, like, everyone expected reading a script to be a dry experience.
Mm.
And people couldn't put his scripts down. Like, they were like, this screenplay is better than some novels I've read, because just, like, even though it was, still very economical and to the point. So I just that reminded me, like, as an example of how you write in one medium will affect how you write in another.
And I should emphasize that you do want to, if you're writing a screenplay, try to convey a sense of the tone in the action text, while at the same time understanding what you are creating is not a movie. You are writing a blueprint for a movie,
Right.
that a team has to then interpret and use that as the instructions to craft said movie.
Right. All right, we got one from Rob. I think it can be assumed all writers have a run-in with writer's block at some time in their careers. What was the toughest bout you had, and what finally kicked things loose?
Oh, you are correct. And not just a single encounter with writer's block.
No.
Probably the toughest bout, both the toughest bout and the longest bout were both with Hop Jockey, actually. And the longest bout was because, like, I was talking about those short stories I wrote back in college. The first Hop Jockey narrative was a couple of short stories. And I knew I had something there that I really wanted to expand, and I liked the tone, and I liked the setting, and I liked the world, but I didn't know what the greater show was. And so for the longest time, I had writer's block in the sense of, how do I turn this into an ongoing thing? How do I turn this from a couple one-off short stories into a narrative that can carry over multiple episodes, multiple chapters, whatnot? And the difficulty I ran into there was I didn't know how it ended, and I didn't know what made it unique. And so I ran into a position that I found, unfortunately, can be the case in a lot of times when you have a creative executive who doesn't necessarily have a creative background, is they have a vague sense of what they want, but they define it negatively.
Right.
In the sense of, well, I don't want that, or I don't want this, or you turn something in and they say that doesn't work for me, but they can't tell you exactly what they do want. And so how I got over that with myself, and when I'm working with a struggling student or whatnot, about how do you actually is to stop and say, okay, what do you absolutely love about your idea? What is it that's exciting? Because I got to tell you, the individual lines of dialogue, the individual beats, a lot of that can be shed. A lot of that can be changed. The location it's set in, that can be changed. As for the specific, most difficult bout was probably writing the Stray and the Hole in the Stars. because I was converting it from the pilot that I wrote in film school. And the difficulty there was the structure of a pilot needs to be different than the structure of a novel.
Right.
Like a pilot needs to introduce all the characters, give a sense as to what the world is like, hint at where the series could go, but also not satisfy, so that they tune in later. You can't do that with a novel, or at least I don't think you should do that with a novel. I'm going to tease, and you're not satisfied, and you're an asshole, and I'm not buying the next book.
Right.
So there was this whole section that needed to be added, this whole act in the novel, which was all the players were in place. Now I need that character development where things can go wrong and the relationships can sour or develop, so that by the time the ultimate push is made, the characters had a chance to arc and learn from stuff and make some mistakes that are ultimately going to haunt them. And because that was new, it took a lot longer to outline, and I went through various iterations of what has to happen. But I did solve it ultimately. I won't tell you how, because that would involve spoilers, but I'm very pleased with how it wound up.
Sounds like you're going to have to buy the book.
Yes, that was a ding. That was a good sound. A text from the wife. Here's the point that I should make. Writer's block, as it is commonly understood, does not exist. Writer's block is simply not knowing where to go next. Act 3 problems are Act 1 problems.
Okay.
If the world is not well defined enough in the beginning, the character in their starting state, the physics tweak that makes the world's fantasy rules, if those aren't clearly in place, then they're going to limit where you can go. And if you reach a point where you're like, I don't know where to go anymore, it's because you haven't done the work at the beginning.
Okay.
That steers that character in that direction, or steers the world in that direction.
Okay.
And finally, from Andy for Nathan. How hard was it to get the Roderick paint out of netherwares and none of your businesses? Addendum, because it was a pain in the ass to get it in there, but he insisted.
Yes. So, depending on which season you're talking about, there's either somewhere from none to a whole lot of pain in the netherwares and none your businesses.
Pain or paint? Or was
paint.
It, oh, because you said pain.
Pain. Well, there was both. Sorry.
Freudian
I
slip,
need to
ladies and
enunciate.
gentlemen.
No, getting it in there was its own special process. Because the season 1 loincloth, like when you crouch down with your knees up, there's a very small piece of real estate there that kind of has to get covered up, because you can cover up the most important part of that real estate, but everything around it is going to be showing. And if you're not in the process of crouching, then the loincloth is rubbing against that and rubbing off more paint. So getting crotch paint reapplied between shots was definitely a fun, quote-unquote, fun experience. Getting it out, I know for season 2, I remember there were a few different shots. One day was after Glorian had given Roderick the clothes, so didn't have to worry about it at that point. But the day where there was one shot before he was given the cloak to drape over himself, where they had to apply the makeup, and in this case they had to apply a whole lot of it to those nether regions. And when we were done shooting, we were in a location where there was no shower. Like, there was no specific place to remove it.
That was Jigsaw Renaissance, wasn't it? Yeah.
So what happened was there was a janitor's closet with a utility sink.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah. So I started off in there, and I can't remember, maybe he came in with me, I can't remember why, but Bo Pritchard came by and actually helped me scrub my body clean of paint, because it was not a one-person job in a utility sink. So it's the only time I've ever had another person scrub me down like that.
He hasn't worked with us since.
No, I think we drove him away. I mean,
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that he helped me with that. But it was definitely a two-person job in this, and there was no hot water in the sink. Like, the water did not turn hot. It was cold. So it was a cold sponge bath applied by another person who did not sign up to give me a sponge bath in a utility closet. So yeah, that was an experience that I had.
You ready to model that Roderick shirt now?
Yeah. See?
Talk to you next month, everyone.
Bye-bye. Oh, yeah.